If you don't have your fantasy team already, you're probably drafting today or tomorrow. So let me give you some running backs that you should either be targeting in trade or in your draft, starting with somebody that will be very difficult to acquire, but it may be worth it with Christian McCaffrey. Now, sadly, I was not able to get McCaffrey in the Flock League. Sal Vetri actually ended up taking him at pick 5, right ahead of me, where I selected Saquon Barkley at 6. And full transparency, I don't have Christian McCaffrey ranked as the top 3 running back. I personally am McCaffrey at the 4 spot. And depending on your league settings, I think that he is anywhere from the 4th most valuable player in fantasy football to potentially the 8th. Obviously, very much depends on, are you in a non-PPR league, full PPR league, half PPR league? Is it a 10-team format? Is it a 14-team league? You know the whole 9 yards. But with McCaffrey, what makes him so compelling is the true ceiling that you have in this offense. The first thing that I want to discuss will be the overall offensive environment that the Niners will have this season, because we need to go through and we need to look at the schedule. Because if you remember, the Niners, they were not good this past year. They had a multitude of injuries, which actually is going to set them up with arguably one of the best schedules in the NFL this season. And if we look at sportsbooks in weeks 1 through 14, they actually are projecting the Niners to only be outscored by the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles. They are tied as the 5th highest scoring offense in projections, alongside the Washington Commanders. But a lot of this has to do with how good their schedule currently sets up to be. Week 1 at Seattle, that game's winnable. Week 2 at New Orleans, they'll be heavy favorites. Week 3 at home against Arizona, very winnable. Week 4 against the Jags, that game, they will be heavy favorites. Week 5 against the Rams will be a close contest. Week 6 at Tampa, Week 7 at Atlanta, Week 8 Houston, Week 9 New York Giants. Week 10, you have the Rams again. Week 11, the Cardinals again. Week 12, you have the Panthers. Week 13, you have the Browns. Week 15, you have the Titans. Week 16, you have the Colts. Week 17, you have the Bears. We'll talk about DeAndre Swift later in this video. But regardless, you go through the schedule, and it's hard to find 3 games that they're going to be underdogs in. I mean, this should be an offense that's able to put points up on the board, and they should be able to run the ball in the second half. And then we combine this with the true ceiling that we have from McCaffrey. Now, there's one funny thing that I can do, and I can go back to 2019 and go, oh my gosh, Christian McCaffrey scored 471 fantasy points. He has the highest ceiling of any player ever in fantasy. I'm not going to do that, right? McCaffrey's never getting back to 2019. That was 6 years ago at this point. I think realistically, we can't say he has anything of a higher ceiling than what he was the last time he was fully healthy, which was 2023. But if we use the player comparison tool on flockfantasy.com, you can actually see that McCaffrey, the last time he was fully healthy in 2023, in comparison to the quote-unquote league winners from last year with Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, McCaffrey significantly outscored them. You had CMC with 391 fantasy points in comparison to Derrick Henry at 336, and in comparison to Saquon Barkley this past season at 355. So historically speaking, McCaffrey, when healthy, he has already outscored the other elite running backs by a wide margin. You combine this with the fact that his offense has phenomenal projections this year. You combine this with the fact that you are currently sitting with one of the best schedules you could possibly ask for. I think that he's a locked and loaded top 5 running back. I have him ranked as my RB4 using the trade finder on flockfantasy.com. Some very reasonable price points that I would pay. Somebody in a 10-team start 2 wide receiver 1 flex traded Tyreek, Kamara, Trevion Henderson for CMC. Give me CMC. Somebody swapped Taylor for CMC. Somebody traded Chase Brown, Egbuka, Ollie Gordon for McCaffrey and Matthew Golden. Love those price points. And what's actually really funny is as I'm putting together my week 1 rankings that are going to come out in a couple days on flockfantasy.com, you can actually see that the projections for McCaffrey week 1 are insane. If you were looking at the Underdog pick'ems, they currently project CMC to have the number 1 spot with his total receiving and rushing yards at higher lower 110.5. Now, I'm not going to be ranking McCaffrey number 1 in my rest of season rankings because I do think you're at an elevated risk of injury due to what he had last season if we're comparing to the younger running backs that are there inside the top 3. But sticking with the Underdog pick'ems, every year the first week of the season, it is ridiculous the amount of promos that they put out there. So I need to make sure you stay on top of this. The first thing is Thursday night, you're going to have a Saquon Barkley gimme pick, higher, lower, half a rushing yard. Also that Thursday night, you're going to have a 50% profit boost token. The Friday night game with the Chiefs and Chargers, another 50% profit boost token. Saturday, a 100% profit boost token. And then you're going to have additional deals on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Week 1 is always the craziest week when it comes to the promos, so you have to make sure you're taking advantage of it now. They're even allowing us to create our own special boosted Underdog Fantasy Flock Pick'em Pack. Love if you rode this with us. We have Dak higher than 229.5 passing yards, Barkley to score a touchdown, Pickens for fewer than 5 receptions. That's a 5x boosted pack. And on top of that, when you sign up to Underdog Fantasy and you use code FLOCK, you are going to get a $50 credit added to your account after you play your first $5. And if you are a paid member of flockfantasy.com, go to the post page, fill out the newest Google form that we posted, and you're going to get an additional free $10 Underdog credit. And that part doesn't even matter if you've been on Underdog with us for years or you're a new user. If you are a paid member of flockfantasy.com, go and claim that free $10 now. I'm going to leave the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description and comment section. Again, week 1 is the most important week that you take advantage of the promos because they go crazy with them. Now, going over and looking at our next quote unquote buy low, we are going to be taking a peek at Josh Jacobs. I recently have moved Josh Jacobs up to the very top of our tier B in our rankings, ahead of Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, and Kyron Williams. And you will never hear me come out here and talk about an individual defensive player trade mattering for somebody on the offensive side of the ball outside of this one time, because Micah Parsons is just not a normal defensive player. You add Parsons to this Green Bay Packers defense, and all of a sudden, the projections for their game environment will change a considerable amount. I'm not going to be surprised if this actually wins the Packers an extra game or two, and we are able to see them run the ball in the second half effectively, which is what they tried to do last season. We go through and we look at Josh Jacobs. I understand maybe I quote unquote whiffed, and yes, I know I did. I thought it was a good idea to pass on Derrick Henry early last year, take Josh Jacobs in the middle rounds. I ranked Jacobs over Henry. It was a horrible call. However, Josh Jacobs was still good last season. At the beginning portion of the season, while y'all were dunking on me, I definitely deserved it, because weeks 1 through 9, he only averaged 14.4 fantasy points per game, which was good for the running back 22 mark, according to flockfantasy.com. However, in weeks 10 through 18, Josh Jacobs jumped up to 20.4 fantasy points per game, which was good for RB4 during that stretch, according to the site. We go over and we look at the trade finder on flockfantasy.com. Some recent deals that people have made for Josh Jacobs. Somebody traded Terry McLaurin and George Pickens for him. Somebody traded Calvin Ridley and Chuba Hubbard for him. Somebody traded David Montgomery, Cortland Sutton, Ricky Pearsall for Josh Jacobs and Stephon Diggs. And obviously, y'all saw my deal that I made for him in the Flock League, and I'm feeling very good about that with the addition of Micah Parsons. Assuming we get slightly better game environments for the Packers running backs this year, and speaking of the other running backs on this depth chart, you actually have Marshawn Lloyd now hitting the IR and is going to be out for the first 4 weeks. So you have absolutely nothing behind Josh Jacobs. Now going over and looking at where we are at with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is a running back that I know we bring up one fact and one fact only every time I discuss him in the rankings videos, and that is the receiving involvement that he had from 2023 to 2024 and how big of a step forward it was. And it cannot be understated. You had Kenneth Walker going from 7.7% of the Seattle Seahawks targets per game in 2023 to almost doubling that to 13.8 the following season. You had Kenneth Walker jumping from 2.5 targets per game up to 4.8 targets per game, almost doubling. And now you bring in a coaching staff that's known to get those running backs involved as receivers, and we should expect that Kenneth Walker continues to see close to 5-ish targets a game. We go back to what he's averaged over the past 3 years, where he's been at about 14.5 carries per game as well. So now all of a sudden, Kenneth Walker projects to be a running back that's on the last year of his rookie deal that should see about 20 touches per game. Now, I understand the concern with Kenneth Walker is the injuries, the games played, blah, blah, blah. And it's very easy to remember, oh yeah, Kenneth Walker misses time, because the second Kenneth Walker's out, I go ahead, I throw Zach Charbonnet as the top 5 running back in my rankings that week, because we can just say that Zach Charbonnet is a bell cow and extremely talented in his own right. So it seems like we do that quite often, and it seems like Kenneth Walker's missed a bunch of time. But realistically, Kenneth Walker over the past 3 years has averaged about 13 and a half games played per season. Now, is 13 and a half games played per season ideal? No. But if you're going to give me the RB12 production from a points per game perspective last season for 13 games, I'll take that with where you're currently having to get him. I mean, I have him ranked as my RB17, right ahead of Chuba Hubbard as well as Breece Hall. And if I'm looking at the current cost that you have with Kenneth Walker from the trade finder on flockfantasy.com, you'll see somebody swapped Isaiah Pacheco for him. Somebody swapped Ted McMillan for him. Hell, somebody was able to package together Dak Prescott and Travis Etienne for him, which would be hilarious. I mean, if I sent that to Danny in the Flock League, I'd get laughed out the room. Now, going over and looking at DeAndre Swift, the underrated thing with DeAndre Swift is he has been a top 24 running back in points per game every single year of his NFL career. The worst season that you ever had from DeAndre Swift, he had 12 and a half points per game. And I thought the Chicago Bears were going to move on from him this offseason. New coaching staff, they come in. Typically, a new coaching staff doesn't really care about the incumbents. They're going to go out there and they're going to get their guys, especially a coaching staff like Ben Johnson, where they have historically leaned on the run over and over and over again, or at least that's what we saw with the combination of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. That didn't happen. The only investment that this team made was a day 3 pick with Kyle Monangai, a running back that was not even on my radar before the NFL draft. And what is hilarious about this is you go through and you look at the other offensive investments that they made. They went out and they drafted a tight end inside the top 10 picks of the NFL draft when most people didn't think they needed one. They went out there, they drafted Luther Burden at the top of the second round when most people didn't think they needed a receiver. So they didn't feel 100% confident with their running back room because they did bring in a bunch of running backs to test before the NFL draft, and they really just didn't have one falling to them that they liked. But the fact that they are willing to go into the season with Swift, with an offense that projects to be the most improved offense in the league this year, I don't see how he can't finish as a top 24 running back. I currently have him ranked as my RB22, which historically would kind of be the worst year of his NFL career. And what's really funny with this as well is just to get the true numbers of what they should project to be this year. You are looking at 2025 projections from sportsbooks, putting the Chicago Bears as the 16th quote unquote best or the 16th quote unquote worst offense in the league. Which obviously you can't sit here and you can't say that's super exciting. And I know some Bears fans will probably be upset and they'll probably say, oh my gosh, we're going to be way better than league average. Well, league average would be a dramatic step forward in comparison to what you had last season. Because last season, the Chicago Bears were the 5th lowest scoring offense in the NFL. So if we get that type of progression, you have no additional competition. I think DeAndre Swift is going to crush. Now, going over and looking at some other running backs, I hope I'm wrong with this, but Tyrone Tracy looks like he's the starting running back for the Giants. Reason I hope I'm wrong with this is I took Cam Scatterby really late in the Flock League, and I'd love to have another starting running back on my team. But for now, it looks like Tracy is the guy, and y'all know what I always love to do with these rookies. I always love to go over to the player comparison tool. I always love to put in the first half of their rookie seasons and the second half of their rookie years and try to figure out, did they improve? Were they able to take more work? And can we see that momentum carry into their second season? It did happen with Tracy, because we go ahead and we look at Tracy weeks 1 through 9. He was averaging 9.4 points per game, and he was the running back 36. We go ahead and we look at Tyrone Tracy weeks 10 through 18. That jumps up to 12.2 fantasy points per game, where he was the RB23. We actually see him jump from being 36th in the NFL with his snap rate for the first 9 weeks to 12th in the NFL with his snap rate in the second 9 weeks. We see him jump from 35th in the NFL in rushing attempts per game to 21st We see him jump for 29th in rushing yards to 26th. We see him jump from 51st in yards per carry to 43rd. We see him jump from 0.11 rushing attempts inside the 5-yard line to half an attempt inside the 5-yard line a game. We see him jump from 37th in targets to 15th in targets, 38th in receiving yards, 20th to receiving yards, 52nd in total touchdowns to 27th in total touchdowns, and 33rd in total yards to 21st in total yards. So legitimately, every statistical category, Tyrone Tracy got better from the first half of the year to the second half of the year. And that's what you want from a rookie, especially a rookie that was a positional convert as well. Now, if you play in a league that's the only thing that matters is upside, Tyrone Tracy may not be that relevant. Just full transparency, because I don't think Tracy can ever turn into a top 5 running back. I don't think he's good enough. I don't think the offense is good enough. Where I'd be excited to trade for Tyrone Tracy is if it was like the Flock League, where it's a 12-team format, multiple flex spots. So it's like, oh, okay, if I can get a top 24 running back in, that's going to be a profitable pick. That can be somebody I put into a flex. Like going over and looking at the trade calculator, we saw somebody trade Joe Mixon for Tyrone Tracy. And honestly, if you were sitting with Mixon on your team, I think we would go ahead and make that swap. Now, the last player that I want to bring up is going to be, yes, you know him. Yes, you love him. Quinshon Judkins. Now, I am not going to advocate for taking Quinshon Judkins in the 5th round of fantasy football drafts. That would arguably be the worst pick in any fantasy football draft ever known to man. Do not do that. But I answer questions on the live stream every single day. And I have been receiving a multitude of questions of people asking if they can cut Quinshon. For me, I think based off the recent remarks that we had from this Browns coaching staff, where they cut every single Browns running back not named Dylan Sampson or Jerome Ford, when asked if they were really only going to go into the season with 2 running backs, they said, you know what? We probably expect another guy to be in here soon. Obviously, they're mentioning Quinshon Judkins. He was an elite level prospect. All the charges were dropped. The NFL is still doing their investigation. I don't think you have him at the beginning of the season. It's a garbage offense, so I'm not going to go out there and rank him with where he's previously going at the 6-7 turn. But if you can get him in the double-digit rounds, or if you can get him off the waiver wire for free, I think you go for it. And again, the main thing is I do not think that you should be cutting him. And if you see him on the waivers, go ahead and pick him up. But I really appreciate you, and I really want to make sure that you are taking advantage of all the promos that you have week 1, because the promos are not going to last like this. Again, week 1, the promos are always the best. So on Underdog, you get a gimme pick on Thursday. You get the 50% profit boost on Thursday as well. Get a 50% profit boost on Friday, a 100% profit boost on the main Sunday slate, additional pick'em gimmies when we're looking at Sunday and Monday to be released. We also have the Flock Fantasy boosted pick'em pack on the Underdog app as well, which you know I'll be sweating on the live stream. And if you use code FLOCK, you are going to be getting a $50 credit added to your account after you play your first $5. And if you have a paid membership to flockfantasy.com, fill out the Google form and you're going to get an additional $10 hooked up into your Underdog account. I'm going to leave the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description and the comment section. It's available in almost every single state. Make sure you use code FLOCK if you want to get those maximums when it comes to all the free gimmies. But I think that's all I got for you. I really appreciate you, and I really hope you get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.